I now start the process for stripping this to bare metal. Main goal at the start is to just degrease the bottom of the car with something aggressive. Oven cleaner works fantastic. Highly recommend it if you're okay with it eating away your paint as well, which I was, so it was perfect. From here we take a pause from cleaning and stripping. I present the rabbit hole. This is custom made suspension for my car to replace my leaf springs with coilovers and a torque arm. There are a few amazing parts in this kit, and I will come to regret this decision to some degree, but that's a story for later in this video. All that it matters now is I need the shock mounts so we could weld those in place before I painted the bottom of my car. We already ran into our first roadblock. The instructions for the shock mounts are very unclear about the points of reference to get these mounts in the correct location, so we had to push this project out so Chassis Works could get back to me with the correct information. This is the start of a series of unfortunate events with the suspension. I found out that the instructions they gave me for a second gen Camaro are actually written out for a first generation Camaro, and all the pictures are for another car entirely. It's never mentioned in the instructions, and I eventually got the right info, but this is in 2020. The instructions are still incorrect on their website near the end of 2023. It is now 2021. We have clear instructions on what needs to be done. I didn't have a 240 volt outlet because the home builder claimed there were wires in the garage for a car charger already. Though sort of true, we had no idea where they terminated as they were not in my junction box, so I tapped into my solar panel wiring. We got the shock mounts welded to the rear frame rails. And we took apart the front subframe with a lot of heat. Oh yeah, we also stitch welded the bottom of the car to give more strength because I didn't want a roll cage. I picked up a few cosmetic things. The movie accurate front spoiler. This is not the OEM spoiler these cars used. It is an aftermarket one with a different design. I got the correct gauge panel for my car a while ago, but that had pre-drilled holes. They put the holes for the indicators in the wrong locations, which I wasn't pleased about. A few people got together in the Bumblebee community and got the company to do a limited run for a blank panel with the brushed silver color. The RBO code is Bumblebee. March 2021, I got a few more components for the rear suspension, the cross member for the torque arm, and the subframe connectors. At the time, I did not know this, but this would be another source of headache from the suspension. I picked these parts up locally, threw them in my Civic, and took a few pictures of the showroom. My hand against the Fab 9 was for measuring purposes that I ultimately didn't have to deal with. Around May or June 2021, the car is finally stripped to bare metal, aside from the wheel wells, which I have to deal with at a later point in time. As you can see, for a 50-year-old car, this was pretty spotless. It's fantastic. I got the car prepped for Southern polyurethane epoxy with 80 grit scratches and wax and grease remover. I mixed up 3 cups for 3 passes. For never painting anything before in my life, including house walls and spray cans, I think this came out fantastic. Of course it was the underside of the car meant to hide your mistakes, but there's a reason I practiced with it. I put the seam sealer down and then covered that in U-POL Raptor liner. We're now in 2022, I'm selling my house, my car is still sideways, we have a deadline now to finish this. We welded in the crossbars for the rear suspension. Why they give you powder-coated part you have to strip the paint off is beyond me, but whatever. We bolted in the rear control arms because it's easier with the car sideways. Then we get it off the rotisserie and we put it on furniture dollies so we can turn this into a roller. I still don't have the rear end, so the torque arm can't be used yet, but we got creative with some sway bar mounts off my dad's Tundra to act like shocks. The next thing on the list is modifying the subframe to fit my needs. I personally felt like an aftermarket subframe was not required as you can modify the stock one to have good geometry. And most forced me to use bigger wheels. I still need to use 15-inch rims, so that wasn't going to cut it. I got this product from Global West. It requires you to chop off the stock shock mount from the car, weld in a new bracket, and it gives you about 2 extra inches of travel on your shock. This helps a lot if you plan on lowering the car as well. The next modification is adding a locating bracket for the subframe connector. This was my first hint something wasn't correct, but it didn't cause us problems yet, so we've ignored it. You see, in the instructions it says we had to cut off 3 inches on the subframe to get these brackets to fit. We did not have to do that. But we got them to fit, so we bolted in the subframe connectors and the crossmember and moved on to the next thing. This car can now be rolled around. I'm getting pretty close to needing to move out. My lower control arms finally came in the mail, and I got that in my car with the old spindles without much of an issue. I will buy new spindles later, don't worry, just had to get these on the car to roll. Crunch time is now over. We ratchet strap the hell out of the rear end and center it in the chassis and tow it to my new home. This is where the project came to a halt for a while, as many other things took priority. In July, I got my rear gears from Strange Engineering. They're 3.7 with a Strange S-Track posi. If I knew this was coming directly from Strange when I ordered it, I would have gotten it treated so I didn't have to worry about a break-in period. I got new spindles ready to accept the Willwood brakes that will supposedly fit my rims, but I still don't know yet. The template that you can get from Willwood that I cut out says they should fit, but I have some doubts and I will probably have to do some clearancing on the calipers, but that's a problem for another day. I purchased a movie correct radio because someone was selling it at a decent price. I will eventually gut this and add Bluetooth and other stuff, but that's a project for another day. Finally, we get one more important piece, my floater housings from Strange. These are essential to get everything I needed to function the way I wanted, since I did not want to compromise. It fits my rear wheels without modification, and I love it. Now I just wait for my rear end housing, which I ordered almost a year ago at this point. February 2023, I finally have my rear end. Many local shops refuse to weld the housing ends for some reason because they work on big trucks or Toyotas or something, and it made no sense because a solid axle is a solid axle, regardless of what they're using it for. But I found a shop willing to do it, and they did an amazing job. Time to get this under my car. It's April, and I finally get the rear end into the car. We get the Watts link installed, and it's all coming together. The main reason why I did all this has been revealed. I shortened the axle a few inches from stock, so my rims now fit. No, I'm not kidding. I did just spend about $15,000 on suspension, because I wanted very specific rims and tires to fit in my car without rubbing. The logic was, why buy a whole new axle and shorten it if you're still using leaf springs? Why not just get coilovers at that point so you can adjust the ride height easily for when you want to look more like Bumblebee on the street and lower it for track days? This was one thing I refused to budge on, and it spiraled into this whole mess. Anyways, you know how I mentioned the subframe connectors are going to cause me problems? Well, we'll talk about that now. The excitement for putting the new rear end was short-lived as the torque arm didn't fit. It was too long. It either didn't fit in both holes on the 9-inch or was 3 inches past the mounting point on the crossmember. This turned into a several-month argument with the vendor. Chassis Works refused to acknowledge anything was wrong with their product. They tried blaming it on variations between these cars because they're old. They tried blaming it on my front suspension because they can be different. Let's break some of that down. Unless my car was in a serious crash, there's no possible way my car would be 3 inches shorter than it should be without it being super obvious something changed. Why even suggest that? The other problem is that the subframes being different between a 70 and 74 and a 75 to 81 has nothing to do with the rear suspension. The subframe connectors bolt to the old leaf spring mounts. The crossmember for the torque arm bolts to these connectors. At no point is the subframe involved with the problem presented. Trying to explain that to them felt like I was talking to a brick wall, because realistically, they didn't want to own up to their own mistakes. Anyways, on their website, the parts pictured in their instructions show the subframe connectors for my car are different and supposedly longer. I asked them to get their measurements in CAD, and they refused because they were moving locations. I don't see how that had any bearing on the problem, but whatever. So I asked them, are the torque arms for 70 to 74 different from a 75 to 81? They confirmed they were, and I asked how long each one was. You would have never guessed, but they were 3 inches off. So my subframe connectors are wrong. Anyways, they tried selling me on a new torque arm crossmember instead of exchanging my parts that I verified my order did specify the correct ones. I don't like solutions that involve paying for other people's mistakes. I wanted the correct subframe connectors, but compromised and had them shorten my torque arm. They returned it without repainting it, which they gave me painted at the start, which was annoying. But would you look at that? It fits now, because I know what I was talking about, and not all your customers are morons. Finally, we're closer to the present. I bought a Bosch Gen 2 iBooster out of a 2018 Honda Accord. This will be a unique project I will go into more in depth later. I got my Dirty Dingo engine mounts, my new clamshell mounts, a transmission core for mock-up, transmission crossmember, and a bell housing to fit my soon-to-be motor. That brings us to today. After about 5 years of owning this car and 4 years without an engine, Bumblebee will have a heart again. This is a 6.2 liter LT4 out of a 2019 Corvette Z06. It has everything it needs to run aside from the fuel pump. The next video will show me putting this into my car. If you are interested in following along with this project, please subscribe. There's a link in the description below for my Instagram so you can get pictures a bit sooner than they would appear on YouTube. There's also a Google Sheet link that details my entire project with what I have bought, what still needs to be bought, and how much everything has cost me so far. Please leave a like and a comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time.